Welcome to another edition of Overcome Out Loud with Charlie Smith. This podcast was created and dedicated to helping people that are facing adversity, challenge, or change in their lives find some hope through the sharing of people's stories that have overcome adversity in their own lives and telling their own story about how they have overcome. And today I'm really excited and can kind of feel very honored and lucky to have found a new friend in my life, and a really, really powerful mentor and fellow mental performance coach. Welcome to Overcome Out Loud, Gladine Frasso. How are you?
Hi, Charlie. I'm doing great. Thank you so much. And everyone can call me Coach G.
That's right. I
Yeah.
was gonna say, and we call you Coach G because you're, in not just in the athletic, I think, context, but just in the life context, you're an incredible example and a great coach. And Coach G is the founder of I Am Mentally Tough. She is a certified mental performance coach and a keynote speaker, and has been using the power of her own story and her own journey to really inspire and help others. And we got connected a few months ago. We're both part of a mental performance mastery program, and I'll never forget. We were on these group coaching calls in the Zoom world with all of the all the boxes and all the squares, the Hollywood squares, and our the guy that ran, Brian Kane, who was our coach and our trainer in the lead, would break us into little rooms. And I remember hearing you speak and share a few times. And when we went into this little breakout room, I was like, I hope I get to spend some time with Coach G. And then as the breakout room appeared, there you were. And
Yeah,
we had our first conversation together. And
absolutely. Yes.
I'll never forget it. And now we get to
Yeah.
spend more time together. So welcome. And maybe if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your origin story. I know it shaped a lot of the things that you had to face in your life. So tell us a little bit about growing up as Coach G.
Okay. Again, my name is Gladine Frasso. You could call me Coach G. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And I think what's different or unique about me is because I faced quite a few adversities in my life, and it was via sports, whether it was relationships or in the workplace. It was just there. And so being born in Brooklyn, New York, I was raised in a two-bedroom apartment with my family, my mother, my father, and my three brother and sisters. So it was just six of us in just a two-bedroom apartment. And looking back now, it's like, we didn't really suffer is because of the memories that we made in that small little apartment. But it's also seeing how my parents were just so addicted to making sure that we had things that we needed, not wanted, because we couldn't afford stuff we wanted, but making sure that we had the things we needed. And I watched them grind from living in a two-bedroom apartment to finally moving us from Brooklyn to Queens, which was a little bit a bigger house, and then finally moving us to Leesport, Pennsylvania, which was a huge house. And we finally were able to afford nice things. They were sending me to camps, 3 to 4 camps, basketball camps over the summer. That was about like $500 each. So just watching them grind, like nothing came to them easy. And so I think me watching them, that kind of helped me have that type of mindset of, okay, if you want something, the solution is to work for it. There's no substitute. There's no luck. It's if you want something, you have to work for it, and you have to be dedicated to the process. And so moving to Pennsylvania, it was kind of a culture shock because, again, I was from New York. We went to school with African Americans, Latinos, whites. And then when I moved to Pennsylvania, it was nothing but white people. And it was just a culture shock for me. And at that time, I've heard of racism, but never experienced it. And that was my first time in eighth grade when first day of school, somebody came up to me and said, I would never forget the words that this young boy said to me. And he said, what are you doing here? And I said, what do you mean? With a smile, I'm laughing because I'm thinking he's joking around. And he goes, no, what are you doing here? You don't belong here, N-word. And I just stood there, and he said the full blown out word. And I
Right.
was like, oh my goodness, like this does exist. Like, wow. And so that kind of changed my perspective a lot growing up is okay, I'm going to face this growing up, and I'm either going to shy away from it and avoid people or just stand up for myself. And I took the route of standing up for myself ever since then. And so um, never played the game of basketball before, but I was so tall. And so being in a new school, right? You want friends. That's the first thing you want, right? Friends. And so I saw like a group of popular girls coming my way, and they was like, hey, they introduced themselves and they said, do you play basketball? You're so tall. And immediately I just had to say yes. I wanted friends. So I'm like, yeah, of course I play basketball. Duh. And so a couple of months later, it was tryouts or the start of the season. I was just horrible, shooting at the wrong basket. In order to get down the court, you have to dribble the basketball, right? Well, I was like holding the ball and walking with it every single time. But the thing about it is throughout the season, I loved the game. No matter how horrible I was, I loved the game and I started to study the game. And so that was in eighth grade. By ninth grade, I took the whole summer off of eighth grade going into my ninth, studied the game of basketball, begged my parents for a basketball hoop, was out there every single day. And just within a year, from not knowing how to play basketball, I ended up being the starting center for my high school varsity basketball team. And so it was amazing. I beat out seniors. It's not like the team was horrible. It was a pretty good team. And just by that summer, working hard every day, sacrificing, going to the parties and going on vacation, I went to the basketball court every day, or I shot at my own basketball hoop and just worked at the game. And that's history. And that summer really changed my life because from basketball, it opened up so many doors for me. So that's a bit of the beginning.
That's a big
Yeah.
beginning. Can you take me back to eighth grade though? And I want to, having myself, I grew up in a very violent home. And so my sense of, I had a bit of damaged personal truth about myself. And so I believed a narrative that allowed me to feel disempowered. And I always kind of shrunk away from those kinds of things when you had that path to make. And you confronted, what I would consider to be some of the worst rejection or some of the worst differentiation as an African-American female in a new school in eighth grade. I mean, let's be real. I mean, moving from New York to Pennsylvania and then going to a new school at such a formidable age, and wanting to fit in so much, where do you think that courage came from for you because you did have that path? You're either going to run from this or you're going to face it. Can you identify where that courage came from and what the behavior was that helped you push through that?
I think, again, it was my parents, just watching them, grind out throughout life. I'm sure they faced a lot of no's and things that didn't go their way. But again, they either could have, sat down and did nothing about it, or faced that adversity and face it head on and, go for what they wanted. And at eighth grade, I'm just only a child at that age. And so it was realizing, okay, you cannot let that one person dictate how you want to move around in life, and you can't let them take your joy. I'm always a happy person, as you know. I'm always smiling, and that's how I was in middle school. I was just happy. I loved listening to different types of music, whether it was Usher or the Backstreet Boys. I was obsessed with the Backstreet Boys back then, and so I was just the happy kid back then, and I did not want to lose that. And so knowing that one person who was just cruel and disgusting to me, at the end of the day, he was just that one person. Of course I cried. I didn't brush it off. I cried. I cried for days, but then I realized, you know what? I can't let this one person affect me or dictate the rest of my life. And so it was okay, move on. But then it opened my eyes that, yeah, it was that one person, but there's more like him, and I'm going to face it. So that was just my first experience. And then training myself at such a young age, this is not going to be the last time, right? So let's see how you're going to face it now and prepare yourself for when it happens later, because you know it's going to happen.
Yeah, I tell people, it's so funny you say that, because I'll be coaching or working with somebody who's facing adversity with a teammate, or they're facing adversity with a coworker or a superior, and they want to I'm going to resign, I'm going to leave, I'm going to quit the team. And it's like, this isn't the last John, Bob, Tom, Bill, Sally. This person's in your life to show you how to deal with people that may not treat you the way you think you deserve to be treated. And how are you going to work through that? Because, we don't choose really the things that happen to us, but we can always choose our response. And that's a lesson that you learned at such a young age.
Yeah, really such a young age. And it was just like, just moving forward from that. Do not let that one person take my happiness. I was such a happy kid. I loved life. I loved people. I loved being around people and just having fun. And I was not going to allow that one person to take that away from me.
One of the things and elements that we train is self-awareness, and that image we have of ourselves. I mean, when I hear you describe yourself, when I hear how you see yourself, that's how I experience you. And I think most people that interact with you see that essence of you. And it's really important to have that self-awareness of who we are and not who others think we should be, huh?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And growing up, and then, you know, being in a predominantly white school, of course, my New York accent just left, right? Um, and so growing older, and it was weird because a lot of people who look like me, African Americans, some at one point did not accept me because they quote unquote said I was too white or I acted too white. I'm like, what does that mean? And so it was hard growing up, especially throughout college, because I went to Millersville University. I loved it there, but then sometimes I wasn't really accepted because they were like, okay, you have white girl tendencies or you speak too white. I'm like, dude, what does that mean? Like, can you just accept me for who I am? And I was lucky enough to adapt to my teammates, love my teammates. We call each other sisters. We literally talk to each other every single day. We have our group chat, but it was just hard growing up as well. When I reached about 16, 17, 18, when I went to college, it was like, I wasn't accepted that way. So it was a identity crisis. Like, who am I? At that point, it's like, okay, who am I? Who do I want to be? So it was, a couple of years I was trying to figure out who I am and who I wanted to be. Then at the end of the day, I was like, this is me. I'm Gladden. I listen to hip hop. The next song may be pop music. The next song may be church. Like, I listen to all types of music. Next song could be rock. This is who I am, and so I'm not changing for anybody. And I think that's what, I wouldn't say made me successful or made me unique, but this is who I am. And I'm not changing for anybody. This is me.
Well, we both share, I know you have George's book, and we both share an admiration for George Mumford. And George came and spoke to a group of friends of mine about 3 years ago. And it's on my YouTube channel. And, he said something so profound, Coach G. He said, you just got to be you. And besides being a parent, it's the hardest job that there is. And if you don't know who you want to be, and if you don't know who you are, you could become what that boy told you should become, or what those girls told you should become. So that really, it's one of the greatest exercises we can do, is to really develop that self-awareness. And what a courageous way you have of explaining it. I want to go back because, I recently kind of came to terms with the idea of having a growth mindset and what it actually meant. And you talked about, because I think a lot of people go through life thinking that if I was good at something, I wouldn't have to work at it. Because I have to work at this, I must not be good at it. They look like they do it so naturally. And so to hear you go from carrying the ball down the court, shooting at the wrong basket, and seeing that this was something I want to get good at. And although I may not be as good as other people who are really good at it already, that if I work at it, then I can achieve it. And I think, I think, I go back to that because I just think it's so valuable and you said it, if you put the effort in, then you can get the results you want, because you went from really making up a story about being a basketball player to then trying to actually playing in college. And it wasn't necessarily just your ability, but it was your effort and that growth mindset of, I may not be good at it now, but there's behaviors that go along with getting good at basketball, and I'm going to engage in those. And next thing you know, you got really good at basketball.
Oh yeah, I got really good in basketball, and so by the time I graduated my high school basketball team, I ended up graduating as the all-time leading scorer with 1,796 points, and those points would not have came without the hard work and watching film. So I talk a lot about confidence, and confidence comes from preparation, but it also comes from watching other people do what you want to do as well. So I was a huge fan of three players back in the day, which was Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, Allen Iverson, and Vince Carter. And I watched film on them every single, like rewinding, watching the same games. And my sister and my brothers, they would laugh at me, but they kind of knew this girl is serious. So they'll make fun of me, but they would just let me alone. And I would just sit there in front of the TV watching them play the sport, rewinding. Okay, how did he do that move? That jab step, it's amazing. I want to try it. So it was a lot of hours watching film and a lot of hours out there on the basketball court, practicing the moves that I just watched for a few hours.
Wow, that's amazing. It's really interesting you bring that up, because I just watched the documentary In Search of Greatness, and Wayne Gretzky has always been known as, he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the strongest, but they said he had an innate ability to skate to where the puck was going to be. He always knew where the puck was going to be. And people are like, oh, what a gift God gave him. Nope. He sat down with a piece of scratch paper when he was a kid, probably like you did at your age, and he would literally sketch on the paper where the puck went in every game. He would watch it over and over again. So it is that, that effort that you put into it and visualizing it and seeing it and then going out and practicing it. And it's true in anything we want in life. And I think that's just such a powerful story. So you had some offers to go and play basketball at a lot of different schools.
Oh yeah,
You're kind of there in
absolutely.
the Northeast, and you chose to stay close to home. Was that because of your relationship with your family, or was that just because of the school, or what made you stay close to home?
I stay close to home, and I don't recommend anybody doing this if you hear me. I stayed close to home because of my boyfriend at the time. So again, ladies, if you're listening to this, if you have the opportunity to go somewhere else and go far, and play, at a different level, just go ahead and do not wait for anybody. What's for you will be for you. But at that time I stayed because I was in a committed relationship with my boyfriend at the time. I believe I was 18. And so that relationship ended probably 2 years later. But one thing that I do mention in my keynote speaking, Ryan, he obviously was the love of my life. And so we broke up 2 years later. But in my keynote, I kind of talk about how I missed him and I visualized us getting back together and my plans and all that good stuff. And so about 3 years later, or 4 years, I forget how many, I'm sorry, we got back together and we are now married with a child. So it came all full circle. But again, I would recommend anybody who has an opportunity to work somewhere that they really want to, and they have a boyfriend at the time, especially if you're not married, just go for it, because what's for you will be for you, and you never know, it will come back around full circle. So don't take my advice about staying close to home because you have a boyfriend. Just go far and do what you got to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, you wouldn't know that if you didn't do that. And I
Yeah.
really love your saying, what's for you will be for you. It's
Oh,
like that. It's
absolutely.
like that Rumi poem. He says, when you fight every day for what you think you want, you're filled with anxiety, stress, and worry. And when you get centered and grounded, you find out that what you want also wants you.
Yeah, it will come to you. If you do the work and you stay focused, it will come to you. And that's a lesson that I've learned throughout my life, in the professional world. And as I work full time in the professional world as an environmental health and safety engineer, and stressing about that, and then being a mental performance coach, stressing about, oh, I see this person is doing that, I see that performance coach is doing that, and it was just like, how can I be like that person? And once I stopped thinking about those other coaches and really focused on me and what made me special and what I could deliver to my clients, my business just like it took off, because I was really, again, being myself, being true to me, and not trying to focus or force things to work. I just focused on me, did the work, and things started coming towards me. So that's just an amazing thing, to just not try to force things. It's one thing to be persistent, but you got to know what to be persistent at, not trying to force things that is just causing you anxiety or stress. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the differentiator that I pick up from you, and I think this is really important, is to put effort into something you care about because you care about it, not because you think other people care about it, and not because you
Yep.
think other people are doing it a certain way. But it's like you
Right.
pursued basketball your way, and you loved basketball
I love it.
because of who you were. And when you pursue
Yeah.
that, you get great results. But if you had said, I think everybody wants me to be a lacrosse player, and I want to break the stigma associated with being an African American basketball player, I'm going to go play lacrosse because I
Yeah.
think that's what other people want me to do. I think
Yeah.
that's where the conflict comes. That's where the pressure comes. And you can be as
You are so right.
persistent, but you have to follow your heart.
Yes, you are so right. And again, and another thing in my keynote that I talk about is the different types of motivation, the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I think both are very important, but you got to have that intrinsic motivation where you're doing it just for fun. You love the game. And I think that's what really drove me towards basketball. Yeah, I sucked. I didn't know how to play, but I loved it. And that's what really drove me to really work hard at it. The extrinsic stuff came after. But if you got to have that internal motivation for something that you're looking to do, you just can't do it just for the rewards or the money, because you're going to keep chasing the rewards. You're going to keep chasing the money. And eventually you're not really going to be happy. So if there's something that you're out there that you want to do, or goal that you want to accomplish, make sure that you really want that goal because it fits your life, is relative to you, and you really enjoy it and you love it.
Wow. Can you break that down for us? So intrinsic motivation and tell me how you define both of those and how you help people understand them.
So it's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I define intrinsic motivation is doing something because you love it. So for example, for me, intrinsic motivation for basketball, I played the game because I love the game. It made me happy. It brought me joy. There was never a time where I was upset that I had to go to practice or upset that I had a game. I love the game of basketball. It just brought me joy, no matter if we won or lost. Yeah, if we lost, I was a little bit upset, but at the end of the day, I was happy that I got to play the game that I love. Now, when it comes to extrinsic motivation, that's the playing the game only because I wanted rewards, or playing the games because I wanted to hear what other people had to say about me. At the end of the day, I did not care what people thought about me. I just played the game because I love it. And when you play the game because you love it and you work hard at it, the extrinsic stuff just comes right away. You don't really have to chase it, you know? So after every game, my name was always in the paper, but that's not why I played the game. I didn't play the game because I wanted to see my face in the paper next day. I played the game because I was passionate about it and I really wanted to take someone's head off on the court. Like, I was so aggressive and I loved the competition. I just loved the game of basketball, and the extra stuff just came later. It just came with it.
What was the biggest challenge that you faced as an athlete?
Biggest challenge I faced as an athlete. I never had that question before. Biggest? Oh, yeah. I don't even know why I didn't even come close to this. Again, in my keynote, I talk about losing my confidence my first year of college basketball. So here I go from being a top scorer of the school in history, then going to my first year in college. I don't know what happened, but I think it was a conversation with the coach or something she said to me, and all my confidence just went out the window. It was gone. And so my whole entire freshman year, I did not play basketball. I sat the bench. I played like 3 minutes or 5 minutes the entire season. The talent was there, you know, and it was kind of frustrating because I knew I could compete with the girls on the team. I knew the people that were starting over me, I was better than them. So I wasn't bitter at all. I was just, you know, the confidence just wasn't there. And until this day, I can't pinpoint why, you know, I lost my confidence. Maybe because it was just a different level. It wasn't as friendly as high school. You know, everybody's just competing. It was just much, much harder. And so that was the most difficult time playing sports, because again, I loved playing basketball, but I couldn't do it for the entire year because I lost my confidence. And again, it wasn't a talent thing, because by the time I graduated Millersville University, I was also a 1,000 point scorer. And at the time I graduated, I was 11th all time in history. So it wasn't a talent thing. It was a mindset thing. And I'm pretty sure you're going to ask me how I got my confidence back. So I'm just going to go ahead and answer that. And so I kind of had that self-awareness, that self-evaluation of, Gladine, look how you are walking into the gym. You're walking scared. So it's about that, you know, the body language we talk about. Yep. My body language wasn't there. It was very timid. When I stepped on the court, I was scared. I wasn't focusing on the right things. I was focusing on what his coach is going to yell at me for today. I was focusing on what kind of drills are we going to do that I'm going to mess up on. So as you know, where focus goes, energy flows. So I was just focusing on all the wrong things. And I also, the self-talk was just horrible. Like, gee, you better not mess up today. I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. And one thing that I packed with me to college is one of the moms on the basketball team made me a scrapbook, and it was all of my article clippings from high school. And it was a thick book. So all of my article clippings, the headlines of Gladine dominated once again, another headline saying Gladine is unstoppable, you know, these things. So I decided to open that book and remind myself who the heck I was. Like, girl, if you were able to do this, you can still do it in college. You just need to know it's just an adjustment. And so I really had to remind myself, you know how to play the game of basketball, right? Just go in there and play your game. So my mindset shifted from thinking about what his coach is going to yell at me today. I just came in the court just feeling just more confident. Whenever we were told to run, I made sure I was the fastest one there, made sure I was there at practice early, getting my ankles taped, just being prepared as well. And so I noticed a difference in my mindset, my body language, my focus, looking the coach straight in the eye instead of looking at the floor, or when she asked me questions, I didn't mumble, I spoke the words out. It was just a different version of myself. So that's how I was able to build my confidence. And of course, you know, the self-talk, the affirmations, and just reminding myself who I was.
Wow. Well, you were right, and I was going to ask you that question. And you and I, have had a couple of different conversations because I think both of us, you've done, your own masterclass or workshop on self confidence. I've developed a talk on unshakable self confidence, and we were able to compare notes and go through,
Mm-hmm.
the confidence gap book that you read later. But you really taught yourself how to overcome that confidence gap
Yeah.
as a freshman or sophomore in college. And I think this is true, not just in sports, but I think it's true in life that as we continue to elevate, we get that promotion, we get that new job, we start to,
Stagnant.
we start to get performance. We start to question, and self-doubt creeps in for the
Mhm.
first time. Like you
Yeah.
were saying, in high school, you were, probably a 3-year varsity starter. You were getting accolades in the paper that you were getting.
4 year varsity starter.
Yeah,
Yes.
4-year varsity starter.
Yeah.
All conference, all league, MVP,
Yeah.
high score.
Yep.
Then you go to college or you get a promotion at work, and next thing you know, well, everybody was a 3-year starter, 4-year starter.
Yep.
Everybody was all conference. The
Yep.
pats on the back from the coach aren't coming all the time, and so all of a sudden that worry, doubt, fear, and insecurity creeps in, and you start to revert inside. And I love what
Mm-hmm.
you did. I'm a big proponent of confidence conditioning, and what you
Mm-hmm.
described about, I just listened to Zach Sorensen's talk about when he was looking at improving his swing. He went to watch Manny Ramirez in the film room, and I don't know if you heard this, but Manny Ramirez would go into the film room and he'd put on his headset. And Zach was always looking at his strikeouts. He was always trying to figure out what was wrong with his swing. He'd watch all of his strikeouts. He'd look at his elbow. He'd look at his hip rotation, and he kept striking out. So he wanted to see how Manny prepared to hit, and what he did when he watched film. Walks in, Manny's got his headphones on. He sits down. The music's blasting. He hits play, home run, triple off the wall, double grounded out, sliding into third. He would watch all of the hits that he achieved. He would
Yeah.
watch himself being, and when they left, Zach was asking him, how come you don't look at what you're doing wrong? He goes, because I'm getting ready to play. You just watch yourself strike out 18 times. I just watch myself hitting dingers off the guy I'm about to face. Who do you think feels more confident? And
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
we're not trained to hunt the good things. We have this, even in work, it's like you have these days and it's like, you know, 80, 90 things go right. And on your way home, you're like, oh, I really didn't get that.
Right. You
That
think about
conversation.
that one thing.
Yeah. So I love that you went back and really encourage in sport or in business to really, at the end of the day, look for those good things, hunt those good
Yeah.
things, see the good that is you, because what you do focus on expands,
Yeah.
and that as you look for the good in you, you'll start to feel more confident. I love the way you
Absolutely.
built yourself up. It's
Yeah.
so awesome.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, so,
Absolutely.
so after what a great college career. I mean, obviously you've just continued to elevate. What happened after school? Where did your career take you?
Right. So after school, I played a few years semi-pro, and my knees were like, "Girl, give it up. We're done." So I stopped playing basketball. Didn't have the best of knees, which was fine. It's something I fully accepted. I was not upset about it. It's like, okay, we're done. Like, let's move on to the next. So with my degree in environmental health and occupational safety and environmental health, that's what I got my bachelor of science degree in. I got a job in my field, and this is where I like to help my fellow female ladies in the workplace, is because I feel like we don't give ourselves much credit and we kind of hide ourselves in the room. And so the first 3 years, and this is no lie, and till this day, I am always the only African American in the room. I'm always the only female in the room, and I'm always the youngest in the room. 10 years in the field, and nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed was my mindset. So in the first couple of years of my career as an environmental health and safety specialist, that's what I started out as. I was just not the worker that I am now. I was not the woman that I am now. I would shy away from the meetings, always sit in the back, pray that no one called on me and asked me any questions, because I'm like, I don't want to talk. I don't want to be here. I was not motivated at work. And it wasn't until I think my 4th year at the job, I ended up being fired. And that was the huge wake up call, because like my whole life just kind of rolled back in my head. And I was talking to myself, like, how dare you get fired from a job because you weren't performing right? All your life, you've been a performer. All your life, you showed up and you dominated. And for you to get fired because you weren't showing up, you weren't motivated to do a job because you were doing half but work, that is unacceptable, Gladys. So I had that talk with me, and going back to my parents, like, talking to myself again, like, you've seen what your parents did. They took you literally from the ghetto to a huge house in Pennsylvania. How do you think they did that? They busted their butt. And so for you to get fired for not busting your butt, that is a slap in your parents' face. And this is the conversation I'm having with myself.
Yeah, right.
And
oh my God.
it's like, how dare you? So at that time, I knew something had to change. And so I thought to myself, why was it that I was so dominant on the court? I had all the confidence in the world, but here I'm lacking confidence. I don't know what I want. And it all went back to goal setting for me. I'm like, okay, when I played basketball, I had goals every season, every quarter, every day. I had a goal. Here in the workplace, I had no goal whatsoever. So I got huge on goal setting. Like, I love goal setting right now. So I set goals. And my top goal was, I love to travel, right? I am Caribbean, so I always thought about traveling to the Caribbean islands and just staying there for work. I visualized me getting back with my ex-boyfriend, Ryan, at that time, just having a beautiful family. And I also visualized of having a business where I could help athletes with their mental game. And so in the workplace, I went from being shy and not talking to just being one of those dominant women you see in the workplace, looking at people in the eye, demanding that me being in the room, and it's not being rude or being disrespectful. It's just standing up for myself. Sometimes people will have that unconscious bias and say certain things to women. In the beginning, I'll just let it slide. But now it was like, hey, that's inappropriate. You cannot say that to me. Or if someone would leave me off an email, whether it was on purpose or not, is, hey, I should have been in this meeting. You left me off in this email. Let's see how we can prevent that from happening in the future. So it was me more like speaking up and having more confidence in myself. And so within, I think, 5 years, I ended up being the regional environmental health and safety engineer, where my region is actually the Caribbean. And I have an office in Aruba, Bahamas, British Virgin Islands, US Virgin Islands, and Curacao. I married my high school sweetheart, Ryan Frasso. And we have a beautiful daughter. And I have now my own business where I help people with their mindset, which is called I Am Mentally Tough. So it all came around full circle. You just have to know what you want, and you have to know how to get there. Like, that gap from where you are to where you want to get to, you have to do the work. You have to. If not, you're just not going to get it.
Isn't it so? It's, first of all, remarkable. And there's so much to dig into there in terms of intention, goal setting, backing it up with visualization, and then getting off your anatomy and getting into action. And
yeah.
But I find this interesting contrast. So freshman year, you experience this kind of erosion of self-confidence. You go back, you do some confidence conditioning, you change your behaviors, your body language, your focus, your self-talk, and you end up elevating the rest of your college career. You get into another situation that you're not familiar with, and that same kind of timid, kind of shrinking mentality came back. And I'm reminded of Tony Gonzalez when he went from playing football, because he had the same, he led the league in drop passes as in his second year in the NFL, had a big confidence lap, started his mental conditioning routine. He calls it his success routine, developed huge confidence. He said self-doubt never crept in again. Then he started broadcasting, and it all came flooding back. So as we get into these new situations, we can expect it. But what you went back to was your standbys, your self-talk. You had this great conversation with yourself of who am I? This isn't who I am. How can I change this? I can visualize what I want to change. And then you created all of that change. So it's what a great testament to creating self-confidence. Because I think it's the number one variable for success. And I think, self-confidence comes from, I think, knowing what we want, having good, healthy self-talk, and having good focus and good body language.
Absolutely. And I had something on my head and I completely forgot what it was. But and I just was, so the first time where and again, twice I lost my confidence, twice I was able to bring it back. And I think the first time around it was back to, the self-talk and reminding myself who I was. This time it was something different. And so with basketball, I had the luxury to going back to experience of what I've done and how that could help me. With this new job, I couldn't go back because this was my first job. I couldn't go back to experience where it was in the workplace, corporate America. So it was about, now let's look ahead. Instead of looking back, let's look ahead and let's goal set and see where we want to go. So that was that motivation for me. Like, this is the life I can have. All I have to do is go back to what I know, which is working your butt off and getting what you want. And at that time is about, if anything is not aligned with your goals or your vision, you have to cut it off. And I was not afraid to cut it off because I knew, hey, this is not helping me get to where I want to go and what I wanted to do. And so the reason why my boyfriend and I broke up back then was because he didn't align with my goals. I'm sorry. I'm like, sorry, Rye, you have to go. But I am spending my time and energy to be on this team. And it was my sophomore year where unfortunately, had to break up at that time because he was not aligned with my goals, and I wasn't afraid of cutting somebody off to get to where I needed to be. And that's what I did. And we have to know who we can cut off, what's the risk of cutting people off, what's the cost of cutting people off. And at that time, it just wasn't beneficial for me to keep going back home, traveling to see my boyfriend, where I know that 45-minute trip, the weekend staying with him, I could have spent that time working on my game, and this is what I really wanted. So that's the sacrifice I had to make back then.
One of the words that jumps out at me is, as you and I are talking, and by the way, as much as I admired you in the brief amount of times that we've spent regularly speaking, I mean, you've turned the dial way up for me. I mean, you're just such an amazing woman. And I just love the passion you have, and who you are speaks, there's this, I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson says, who you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying. We don't have to tell people who we are. We can just be who we are. And you are such an authentic person. So the word that keeps coming up for me is intentional. And you everything that you've described, you got intentional about who you were. Mm-hmm. You got intentional about, it's interesting. I sent you a pen for the story of your life, my pen. And the things that I really focus on when I give people the pen to the story of their life is you have to know who you are, which is self-awareness. You have to know where you're going, which is goals and dreams. Mm-hmm. You have to know how you're going to go there. So who do you want to be as you're going there, so that, you don't have this kind of false sense of self or these unhealthy principles that I lived by for a lot of years. And when I got where I thought I wanted to go, I wasn't really happy with myself. So you have to know how you're going to go there, and you have to know who you're going to go with. And that's your community and your connection. And I so applaud you for helping people understand that knowing who you want to go with requires you to know how you're going to go there, and getting intentional about what your community and the connections you have look like, because there's anchors in our lives and there's engines in our lives. And, you just need more engines than anchors. That's for sure.
Yep. Absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. Absolutely.
So how did you get into, using mental conditioning, getting into training the mindset? I mean, you've been a mindset coach since you've been coaching your own mental game.
Yeah.
Since you were in eighth grade.
Right. And so, before I got into the certifications and found out this is what I wanted to do, I think mental toughness for me was natural, only because I was able to watch my parents, and I was able to, look up to the athletes who I really love, like Kobe Bryant. He's like the face of mental toughness, right? And so he was my favorite player. Allen Iverson, another person who's all about being who you are, original to who you are, and not backing down from anybody. So being able to have those athletes in my life and just trying to mimic what they did, that helped me. And so after college, when I did finally get the big girl job on the side, I stayed home, and of course people knew who I was because I was always in the paper. And so out of nowhere, someone asked if I could work one-on-one with their daughter in the physical part of the game. So I'm like, of course. So we will meet at a basketball court, right? Like 2 minutes from my house, the same one that I used growing up playing basketball. And so I would work with them one-on-one on the games. And so while I was working one-on-one with them, I would like to strike up conversations. We're not just going to sit here and shoot the ball. Let's talk. And so I noticed that a lot of them lacked confidence. And so just by what I went through, I was just talking to them and helping them go through, their struggles. And I started getting emails from parents saying, hey, I'm not sure what you're doing with my daughter or my son, but their confidence level is just different. I want to thank you so much for doing this for my child. And so I got more pleasure out of helping people with their mindset, not the physical part of the game. And I felt we had a lot of coaches out there who are helping athletes with the physical part of the game, which is great, do what you do, but then where are the coaches that's helping them with their mindset? Because as I know, you could be as talented as anybody, but if your mindset is not there, you're not going to get the playing time. So that's when I started researching, is there anything like mental toughness training? And to my surprise, a lot of things popped up. I'm like, wow, I did not even know this was a thing. And so I went through probably one certification, which wasn't the greatest, but with reading books and taking notes and having my own experience, I'm like, okay, I want to be a mental performance coach. I want to help people with their mindset. And so at first it was called 3D coaching: determination, dedication, and discipline. But it just didn't ring. It just wasn't me. Right. And so I'm like, I want to change. What is it that I say to myself? What is it that I want to stand for? And it was just like, I am mentally tough. That's who I am. I am mentally tough. And so that's what I changed my business name to. I am mentally tough. And luckily, I follow a guy named Alan Stein. He's amazing. And so I was like, he's great. And he wasn't born great. I know he follows people that helps him become who he is. So I looked at everyone he followed, which luckily was just a small list. And he followed Brian Cain. And so in Brian Cain bio, it says something about mental performance mastery certification. So I clicked on his website, and I saw that he had a certification for mental performance. At that time, I found him. It was June, and he wasn't opening up until November. And I was like, oh, that's like 4 months from now. I can't wait. So I emailed him. I'm like, hey, I know you have the certification. When is it opening up? He's like, oh, it only opens up in November. I'm like, oh, geez. I was just like so impatient at the time, but I know I had to stay patient because he wasn't opening it up anytime soon. So I did some reading in between there, read more about Brian Cain, looked into his free stuff that he had online. And as soon as that email came for applications, I just shot through, signed up, and got his book, got everything, and did the certification, passed. And it was history from there. He's probably one of the most open mental performance coaches out there, who is willing to literally help those who are trying to, be in the mental performance space. And I couldn't have asked for a better mentor. I couldn't have asked for a better person to follow. He is just amazing. And I'm so glad that I was introduced to Brian, because he's an amazing person. What he teaches is amazing. And I was able to take stuff that I already knew and researched and stuff from his certification and just grow from there. Meeting people like you, the amazing Charlie, it was amazing just to meet Brian, meet the people he's connected to, and it's just history from there. And I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. Like, I have goals. I'm not sure if you were on one of the mental performance calls, but I have a sticky note right there on my computer that says #1 mental performance coach in the world. And I look at it every day. And that's what's going to help me to strive and be better each and every day.
Yeah, I would not be in the camp of betting against you. That's for damn sure. I mean, I've watched, I have, I mean, when I look at the resume, I mean, you've achieved everything you've set out to achieve, Coach G, and then some. Yeah. And the way that you're influencing everybody that you come in contact with is remarkable, especially women who need good, strong mentors. And I love that you talked about, as we wrap up here, I think one of the most important things that you mentioned is the benefit of indirect mentors. I think we have these direct people that influence us, but you never met Alan. I mean, maybe you did, but Allen Iverson, Kobe,
never met them.
These guys, but they influence your life greatly because we can set our sights on people that are in spaces and doing things that we admire. We can follow them, watch them, and take little pieces from it. And just exposing ourselves to them can generate that drive and that motivation to be more like them. Absolutely. So everyone should direct and indirect mentors. Right.
You could take the good and leave the bad. It's not your choice to take everything from them. You take the good, you use the good. And that's why I highly encourage, athletes now and even non-athletes is to, we love these celebrities, but watch who you really, follow. Like, are they really, really good for you? And if there's one good thing that you can take from that celebrity, just take it. Don't try to do everything that they're doing because it's not for you. They're in a different space. They're in a different lifestyle. Take the good, use that to help build yourself.
Wow. Amazing. Well, I have to tell you, I mean, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on Overcome Out Loud, for sharing so powerfully your lessons of overcoming I mean, just I go back to eighth grade, overcoming racism, overcoming
Yeah.
your freshman year in college, and overcoming, kind of that bias in the workplace. I mean, over and over
Yeah.
again, the world has thrown you a bunch of curveballs, and you have fucking
Yeah.
hit grand slams with all of them.
Thank you. And I want to add one more thing. As you can tell by our mental performance group coaching, never stop asking questions. I think I've asked Brian literally 1,000 questions or more, because I'm not afraid to ask questions. If I don't know it, I'm going to ask somebody who do know it, and that's not hurting me. It's building me. I don't care if I'm the dumbest person in the room. I'm going to ask questions. I will continue to ask questions. And I think that's one thing I could use to help me grow, is continue to ask questions. Yeah, I may be, a pretty good mental performance coach, but I'm not at my best. And in order for me to be the best, I have to continue to study. I have to continue to prep. And most important, I have to ask the questions. So someone like you, I could ask you questions. Someone like Brian, I could ask him questions. Other mental performance coaches that I see that they are doing that I like, I'm going to ask them, hey, how did you do that? Like, how can you help me do that as well? So it's about continue to asking questions and then putting in the work to get there, not asking questions and then asking for favors. Hey, can you do it for me? No, ask the question, see how they did it, and just go ahead and implement it in your own strategy and go from there. As you know, success leaves clues. So if someone's doing something that you want to do, ask them the question. Ask them. It doesn't hurt to ask.
No, I think, in fact, it's now, I think, uniquely, unanimously, there's lots of different things people on this podcast have helped people with, but the one thing all of them have said is, if you want something, if you're struggling, or if you want something, ask for help. It is not a sign of weakness. It's the greatest sign of strength and courage, and you actually make yourself better. And I want to ask and follow up on that, because you do it so much. How willing are people to actually help when you've gone out and asked for help? How people really do want to help?
They do want to help. And I've seen a lot of people come to me and say, how can I help you? Because I see how they probably see how eager I am to learn. But I even asked you so many questions. You were so helpful. Colin Henderson, I've asked him a question. He was so helpful. Brian Kane was so helpful. And I'm not sure if it was just me. And it's another thing that I faced in the workplace. I'm not sure why it happened, but I found that my allies came from mostly men. And it's very unfortunate. I'm not sure what older women have against the younger women in the workplace. And I vouch to change that. If I see someone coming up in my position when I'm older and see a youngin, I'm going to grab her by the hands and take her and say, hey, these are the ropes. This is what you need to do. Not one single female that I've had in the workplace did that for me. And it's still shocking to me right now. Like, how could you not see someone who looks just like you, who's eager to do the work, and you not grab her by the hands and help her? That is, if anyone's listening to this and you are a woman in the workplace and you're in a higher position and there's younger females in the workplace, please help them, be their guide, because you have no idea how they could be struggling. They may not be able to say something because they're scared, but check in on them and say, hey, how can I help you? I want to see you successful. I've gone through this. How can I help you? And again, I vouch to do that. I haven't had a younger person in the field yet that I could take by the hand, but once that person come, I got her for life. I'm going to help her out the best I can. And I think more women need to do that in a workplace.
She will be one of the luckiest young women on the face of the planet, because, and I honestly, I mean, I see what you've done for yourself. And there's when I was working with somebody recently, they said, people don't want you to tell them what to do. They want you to show them how you did it. And, you've done so much. And I really, I see you as the change. You're the change that you want to see in the world. You're not just sitting on the sidelines. You're the change that you want to see in the world. And can you just share, and we'll post it in the notes and tag, can you tell our listeners, Coach G, how they can find you on social media and contact
absolutely.
you?
Absolutely. So on Instagram is just basically, I am mentally tough. On Twitter is the real Gladine, spelled DA, the real Gladine, like that. On Facebook, it is I Am Mentally Tough. My website is www.iammentallytough. So trying to keep the same, I am mentally tough everywhere. So just type in I Am Mentally Tough in Google and you will most likely see my social media and whatnot. Other than that, that's where you can find me for now. Maybe I'll expand in the future. Maybe you'll have me back, Charlie, and we could share, catch up, and
for sure. We're just getting started.
Yeah.
Kindred spirits on this journey. And I'm grateful. Like I said, I'll never forget seeing the little Zoom circles go, and then
Yeah.
and then the little, and we were just like we are now, and that's
Yeah.
lasted. And so, and I follow Coach G. I repost her stuff. I'm inspired by her all the time, and I just, once again want to thank you for sharing so much wisdom with us today, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Charlie.